Woo, good morning, Suncoast. I'm Dr. Troy Doucet, and I'm joined with my esteemed colleague, Pastor Brett Watson. Man, you're looking good today, dude.
You are too. I kind of fibbed in the last service. Said I didn't like your outfit, but really I just feel bad that you look cooler than me.
Oh, thanks for joining us, Suncoast, whether you're live on campus here with us in Sarasota or if you're watching online via one of our streaming platforms. Thanks for joining us. We're in week 7.
I know, hard to believe.
Week 7, one more week of a series we've called Game of Thrones. And what we've done is we've taken sort of this comparative look throughout history of kings and kingdoms and how they've used coercive power and political allegiance and just manipulation to kind of get their subjects to surrender and submit to the power of the regent or the king in the kingdom. And we've looked at the teachings of Jesus as sort of this inverted idea of how a kingdom and its citizenry should be. Jesus gives us a stark contrast to the historical kingdoms of the world by saying things like this, like these radical new sayings from the king himself, saying things like, the same power that I as king have access to, you have access to. In fact, Jesus is the only king that we record in history who says this to his followers. He says, you will do greater things than I. Jesus presents us something that's not a quid pro quo kingdom. In essence, all people are equally loved. What I call this, to use a philosophical term, a level ontology. What I say is this is an equal playing field that all people in Jesus' kingdom are equal regardless of what they bring to the table. It's a kingdom that will challenge the prevailing social order of the Western world that we live in. And it challenges this uniquely Western idea of social class, economic elitism, religious dogmatism, and political allegiance and the hierarchical views and values of a culture and stands it on its head. Jesus is saying this kingdom of mine is upside down in that who you think in your culture is last or least is first in mine. It's an inside-out kingdom in that what is going on the outward appearance of a person's life is not always congruent with what God is doing on the inside of that person. And what I love most about this kingdom, Brett, is that this kingdom is not based on believing right doctrines and correct creeds in order to be saved. But rather, this kingdom is about doing what is right, loving your neighbor as yourself to be transformed. That's like a radical new kingdom.
Yeah, not about believing, but about being.
That's it.
Yeah. So we live in a culture, though, a cultural setting in the U.S., right, that is driven right now, especially, by difference rather than unity. And it's kind of a shame, right?
Yep.
One of the things that continues to drive people apart, may be obvious to most of us, I think it probably is the polar extremes of the political arena in America. Now, let me say emphatically that this is not going to be a political sermon in any way, but rather, we all experience this political divide, this political realm, where there's either exaggeration or embellishing or just flat out lying about particular promises, right? The old saying that that a politician's lying. Why? Because he opened his mouth. So we all deal with this. We know it's real. And really, there should only be one person, Troy, one person that should have the right to tell a lie, so to speak, or consistently get it wrong and not lose his job. It's the weatherman. That's it. But the truth is, telling the truth is something that we all value, right? Mm-hmm. On a personal level, we all place value on the truth. Because we know that when lies are spoken, chaos ensues. We know when exaggeration is in play, facts are twisted. Mm-hmm. We know that when we are disingenuous, we tend to lose trust. Now, given all of that, The truth is, studies show that our tendency, our human tendency, is to actually trust others and their words. So this is a quote from psychologist Chris Berglund. He said, "Trust is hardwired into our DNA. Willingness to work together is based on not only on our need for survival, but ongoing cooperation for a better life. Having faith in one another is in the best interest of not only the individual, but the collective of society as well." So it's like we're made to believe each other's words. We're made in such a way that we want to believe what people tell us is true, especially the people in our lives that have an important role.
That's right.
A family, close friends, maybe certain authority figures in our lives, like pastors, teachers,
Yep.
even some political, elected officials. So, with all that in mind, let's look at the scripture for today. This comes from Matthew chapter 5, of course, as the whole series has. This is the Message translation because the way that this is translated really hits home. Don't say anything that you don't mean. This counsel is embedded deep in our traditions. You only make things worse when you lay down a smokescreen of pious talk, saying, "I'll pray for you," and never doing it, or saying, "God be with you," and not really meaning it. You don't make your words true by embellishing them with religious lace. In making your speech sound more religious, it becomes less true. Just say yes and no. When you manipulate words to get your own way, you go wrong.
Yeah, I love that translation of the message and what Jesus is saying here. And today, Brett and I have a few points and principles. You can write them down in your notes if you're taking notes. And here's point number 1 for us today. Don't make blind promises. Do your best to simply say what is true. The two words we emphasize there are promise and true, and we'll talk about those. The word promise comes from an old Latin word, meaning promittere. It means to give assurance beforehand. And how many of you guys have ever made a promise to someone in here? How many of you guys ever made a promise? Yeah, we all have at some time. Now, here's the tricky question. How many guys broke that same promise, right? Same here. It's not that you did so intentionally or that you wanted to hurt someone or you're being deceptive or deceitful, but maybe you didn't take into full account or stock the previous obligations you had or your own limitations of time or maybe the expectations of the person that you made the promise to and what they wanted from it. And Jesus is simply telling us here, don't make blind promises just to look better, to sound better, to seem important. Here's what American author Paul Evans says about broken promises. I love this quote. Listen to what he says. Broken promises are like broken mirrors. They leave those who hold on to them bleeding and staring at a fractured image of themselves. So a promise is a very delicate thing, and it becomes even more fragile the more and more our word breaks promises. But this relates to a teaching. The next word in the point is true. What is truth? That's a very tricky word for me as a philosophy professor. In fact, it's the first lesson I teach my philosophy students when they come to my class. What is true? What is truth? Now, throughout history, philosophers have debated this, and we're going to learn a little something today, so let's put our thinking caps on. There are 3 prevailing theories of truth that we learn about, and I'm going to teach them to you today. So here's the first one. The first one is called the Pragmatic theory of truth. And this theory says truth is determined by what is useful in the world or whether or not it can be beneficial to a person or to the collective.
Whatever works.
Whatever works. Pragmatic theory says truth is that which works. So let me give you an example. How many guys remember physics class and the torture and hell that was, right? Yes.
Spoken like a philosopher.
As a philosopher, right? F equals m times a. So in other words, force equals mass times acceleration. That does me no good, Brett, in the raising of my children. Unless I'm throwing them across the room, right? Force equals mass. Okay, they won't die if they hit the wall, right? Or something like that.
Yeah.
But the truth of that sentiment is this. Force equals mass times acceleration is true. Not because it's important to us, because it works. From that equation, we can build planes that fly. We can build rockets that launch into space, and so forth and so on. That's an easy example, but here's a hard example. This is where that theory, if that's your only understanding of truth, is whatever works for me. It becomes highly subjective to you, like vanilla ice cream being your favorite flavor or Rocky Road. Some people believe that God can somehow intervene in the world and heal people from very terminal diseases. We're not talking headaches or colds or whatever. But statistically, if we're using truth and stats and facts as a measure of what works, like F equals M times A in physics, the truth is this. People who are diagnosed with something like pancreatic cancer die at the same rate, whether you're a Christian, an atheist, an agnostic, a Buddhist. There's no statistic in the world from people who have died, because pancreatic cancer is one of the most terminal diseases that there is out there. Christians don't die at a less percentage than someone who doesn't believe in God.
No.
Now, Brad, you have a good analogy, right? We gather here at Suncoast because we believe in a God who loves us, who cares for us, who created the universe. But I don't find any logical consistency with believing that God can still heal if he chooses to do so, and a God who will not maybe necessarily violate any law of nature, but maybe correct a law, right? We believe our body should be healthy. When you find out cancer is in your body, what do? You try to extract it, terminate it. Nobody feels for the cancer cells saying, oh, those little cancer cells, they're alive too. No, we try to remove it. Why? Because we believe that a healthy body is a good body.
We don't say, I am one with cancer.
Yeah, no, we don't do that, right? Because we believe that a healthy body is one that works properly. Mm-hmm. And so God may not come in and violate any law of nature, but he may come in and correct it, which I believe.
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, think about this. As you look out at the universe, which we increasingly know is really, really weird, really, really fantastic, like the whole thing is miraculous, it's no big deal to then say that, yeah, I believe that the creator of this, if he wanted to, even violate the laws of nature that he made, he can do it.
Right.
So we're not saying that we don't believe that he can, but the facts are the facts.
That's right.
When we look at the stats, it's no different for Christians than it is for anyone else.
That's right. So what we're saying is, even though you may have a truth that works for you, it gives you hope, it needs to be based in a type of logical reality, right? Knowing what is real. This brings us to the second theory of truth we talk about, is this idea of the coherence theory. And this truth is determined whether or not a belief coheres or is consistent with other beliefs I have. I call this, it's the fitting in theory. So I have a chain of beliefs. All of us do. We all have things we believe, right? And they may not come to our consciousness right away, like I believe Paris is in France, right? You believe that as well. But it came to your mind when I said it. So it's part of a chain link of innumerable amounts of things you believe. Like I believe I'm sitting in a chair. Why do I believe that? Well, that is consistent, or it fits in with what I believe about chairs and their shape and what furniture is. I believe Brett is sitting next to me because I believe something about Brett and his Brettness, right? That's the idea. It fits in with what I previously have been taught. But there's a dangerous side to the coherence theory, is this. Why does a person become a racist? Why do they absolutely believe, for some white supremacists, why do they absolutely believe that white people are superior to black people? They didn't just wake up one day, at 3 or 4 years old and go, I'm better than the world. No, that belief is a chain link in many other beliefs. To be a racist for someone who's a racist fits in with previously held beliefs. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. And the danger of that is even in religion, even in Christianity,
maybe especially in religion,
there are denominations which will marginalize and oppress women and not let a woman hold a pastoral role or have leadership over a man. Why? Well, because that belief fits in with all of their previously held beliefs about how the Bible should be interpreted, about what the Bible actually is, about what the role of a woman is in society. And that's where it gets really, really dangerous. And the last one, which we believe is the most true is what we call the correspondence theory. And truth is ultimately determined by what corresponds to reality.
Hello.
What corresponds to what is real. And there's a very easy one out there, Brett. Gravity. Gravity corresponds to reality. Doesn't matter if you believe in it, don't believe in it. Let's say my buddy Brett comes to me. We share an office here on Suncoast. If Brett came to me one day and goes, Troy, I had a revelation from the Lord. Gravity does not apply to me today.
Saw a sign in my cereal.
Let's go to the top of Suncoast building, and I'm going to show you. I'm going to jump off and fly right in front of you. Now, me as a good philosopher, as a good pastor, what would I say to my buddy Brett? I'd go, Brett, yes, let's prove it. Like, let's prove that to me. No, of course not. I try to stop him, but of course, Brett, he's stubborn at times.
Saw a sign in my cereal.
So here we are. And Brett, no, don't. Oh my Brett. There we go. Truth is what corresponds to reality. And the point of this whole lesson right here in this section is simply to say, if I'm not aware of my own reality, my obligations, my limitations, others' expectations, I'm going to make promises. I'm going to embellish my words. I'm going to try to substantiate or validate what I say by things that Brett will talk about here in a minute, by saying things like, I swear to God I'll be there. That's not the point. You have to take stock of what is real, and that's the point of it.
Yeah.
Because what happens is, Brett, the more and more I break my promises to people, the less trustworthy I become. So I change in a person's eyes, but that person changes in their own eyes as well. Because if you break promises to people, like my children are here today, if I consistently broke promises to them, not only would they look at dad differently, they would look at themselves differently, like maybe I'm not worthy of my dad's time. Maybe I'm not worthy of his energy. And that's where breaking promises and not keeping our word hurts.
Yeah. Well, and that leads right to our second point. It says this. Sometimes it's better to under-promise, but then over-deliver, right? How many of you guys have somebody in your life that consistently under-promises but over-delivers? I just talked to somebody out in the Grand Hall. Said that a guy that he used to work for consistently under-promised and over-delivered. Said, I'll pay you $50 to do this job, but then would pay him $100 after he did it. I have somebody like that in my life. It's my wife, Arlene. I'm not just trying to earn points here. This is the truth, okay? I
Speak
promise
the truth,
you,
Brett. It's true.
I'm speaking the truth. No, my wife really does. She lives by the correspondence theory that Troy just went over, where truth is determined by its correspondence with reality, right? So people who know my wife say things about her like, Arlene is a real person. She says it like it is. You will rarely ever hear Arlene promise something and then say, I swear to God. She just doesn't go there. She doesn't need to. Why? Because the people that know my wife see such a consistency, such an integrity in her that they rarely doubt her. Mm-hmm. So here's another important piece, though. Arlene is also consistent about another quality. She's consistently loving. This is really important. So even when she has to speak the truth about something that maybe is hard to hear, people that know Arlene, they understand that her motivation is coming from where? Love, yes. The old adage that people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. Yeah, it's true. And it's exemplified in Arlene's relationships. After 24 years of marriage, I've learned that when Arlene says something, even if I vehemently disagree with her at the time, I need to listen because she's been so consistent and I have benefited so much from what Pastor Larry referred to a few weeks ago. I love this. I've benefited from her integrity of love. Yeah. Her integrity of love. St. Paul talks about this in the Bible too. He wrote this to the Ephesians. Will no longer be infants tossed back and forth by the waves and blown here and there by every wind of teaching and by the cunning and craftiness of people and their deceitful scheming. Instead, speaking the truth in love, we will grow to become in every respect the mature body of him who is the head, that is Christ. Still, we live in a culture, because of the things we talked about earlier, it's become desensitized, right, to the promise makers or the truth proclaimers, yeah? So that we often feel like we need to invoke the very name of God or some other important association in our lives to lend credibility or to lend authority to the promises that we make. You've heard these sentiments. We've said some of them. I swear to God I'll be there. I promise on the souls of my children. Cross my heart, hope to die, stick a needle in my eye. You know, we've all said things like this. But listen to Jesus again. He says, you only make things worse when you lay down a smokescreen of pious talk, saying, I'll pray for you, and then you don't. Saying, God be with you, and you don't really mean it. You don't make your words true by embellishing them with religious lace. In making your speech sound more religious, it actually becomes less true. So decorating our words, right, with a kind of religiosity, not only does it come across disingenuous, it can do harm, yeah? Especially when it is meaningless, especially when I am being disingenuous. Both of which, by the way, do not correspond with reality, right?
That's right.
Yeah. In this way, religious language is kind of congruent with legal language. How many like legal language? How many read the terms and conditions when they download an app before they check that little box?
No.
Nobody does that. How many read the 800 pages of documents at your closing before you closed on your home?
No.
You just signed away. Yeah. So nobody loves that. It reminds me of a joke, though.
Uh-oh.
Got to tell a joke? So this young couple, they're on their way to their wedding. And on the way, they die in a horrible car accident. They're standing at the pearly gates. St. Peter's there to process them. And they say to him, hey, Pete, listen, I don't know if you heard this, but we were actually on our way to get married when we got into that accident. Sorry, guys. These two are getting married this week. It's just a joke. So he said, yeah, I heard something about that. And they said, well, we'd still like to get married. Is that a thing up here? Can we get married in heaven? Pete says, well, hold on a minute. I'll check. So he takes off. Well, he didn't take just a minute. He's gone like 3 months. And so meanwhile, they're just sitting in limbo, right? And they're having all kinds of conversations, philosophical things, what this is going to be like in heaven, what's that going to be like in heaven. And then all of a sudden it comes up, what if we don't work out up here? I wonder if we can get a divorce in heaven. And then with that, St. Pete shows up. Finally, he's winded. He says, guys, great news. You can get married in heaven. Oh, that's awesome. But we were talking while you were away. What if it doesn't work out up here? Can we get a divorce in heaven? He goes, come on. Are you kidding me? Do you know how long it took me to find a preacher up here? How long do you think it's going to take me to find a lawyer?
Ooh.
Yeah. All right, that's pretty good, right? Back to the point. When a person breaks their word, breaks a promise, it creates chaos. It creates hurt, confusion. So sometimes it's better to just try to be consistent. If you do this again and again, under promise, over deliver, man, it goes a long way to creating a sense of reliability and integrity concerning our character, yeah?
That's good, man.
Yeah.
Really good. Point 3 today, if you're taking notes, is this. Be careful, because your words often act like a mirror, and they can reflect your own personal character. The message of Jesus here, it's pretty simple. When we think about what he's teaching us about saying things that are true in context with this strange new kingdom. What is he saying? My words are often a reflection of who sits on the throne of my heart. My words are often a reflection of what kind of person I am becoming. and my words are often a reflection of where my mind is. It's much more than simply telling the truth and being right. It's much more about right being within a tension of truth. And I like that idea, Brett, of being in a tension. I wish we had a rubber band here, one of those little workout bands, right? So we can show tension.
Let me tell them how that translates to me. You were going to bring a workout band, and you forgot, Brett.
I did. I forgot the workout band.
No, I did.
Oh, you forgot it. Yeah, he forgot it.
Anyway.
So if you think about this tension of truth, truth is not something that just exists like absolutely. There's always a tension, right? And like last week or a couple of weeks ago, we talked about salt and light. Too much salt, I can't taste. All I taste is the salt. Not enough salt, the food is still bland. Too much light, I'm blinded by it. Not enough light, if I'm in total darkness for a long extended period of time, I'm blinded. So there's this tension of what is true. And it made me think of the Greek philosopher Aristotle. I think we've all heard of Aristotle. He wrote this book for his son, Nicomachus, and he called it the Nicomachean Ethics. And he created this idea of this tension of truth within virtues of a culture. Like, let me give you an example of this. Every culture that has ever existed has elevated the virtue of courage. Like, we think courage is very valuable, right? We need people who are courageous to go into the fight. But Aristotle looked at it and go, wait a minute. Courage is good, but if there is a tension, then what is the tension? Well, he called it a tension between a deficiency or a lack of courage and a tension between excessive courage, right? And this is true for everything. That's where truth exists, between this tension between not enough and way too much. Both are bad for whatever virtue you value in your life. So like courage, if I don't have enough courage, what am I?
Coward.
I'm a coward. But if I have too much courage, that's not good either. Then I'm what?
Reckless.
Reckless, right? And that can be a bad situation. I don't care how strong or big or tough you think you are. If you run into a fight, 100 people against one, that's reckless. That's recklessness. Aristotle saw that. Like, here's another example. Our culture here in the West, we love the virtue of love, right? What is the deficiency of love? It won't be hate, because that would be an absence of it. But a deficiency of love would be what? Indifference.
Yeah.
I just don't care about you, right? I just don't care about this issue. It's not that I hate it, I just don't care. That's a deficiency. But now the other side of that tension would be an excess of love. What is that? Well, obsession, right? How many guys looked up your ex on Facebook recently, right? You're obsessed, right? Or it also could be enabling. I love this person so much, I just don't want to hurt their feelings, so I'm not going to tell them to stop doing this harmful act or behavior, right? But now think of truth. Brett said earlier, we as a culture value truth. I like when people tell me the truth, even when it hurts, right? Even you use your example of your wife. Now, if I don't have enough truth, what is that? It's not a lie, because that's a blatant absence. But if there's not enough truth, maybe I'm trying to tell a white lie. I'm trying to, maybe exaggerate it a little bit just so you don't know the full truth. But even too much truth can be harmful, right? An excess of truth is unvirtuous, right? It's unbecoming. Like my beautiful wife, if she wakes up one morning and we're getting ready to go to brunch and she has a big zit right on the middle of her forehead, and she does everything to cover it up. And I get up from my sleep and I see her and I go, babe, oh my God, you have a huge zit right there.
You're never going to be able to hide that.
Yeah. Am I telling her the truth? Yes. But it's an excess of truth, right? It would be harmful for that. And that's the idea here, is that we live within this tension of truth. Another example is like police officers. My buddy Pete Abbott was a retired police officer. I got to go on a ride with a police officer during what we called a mock rec, where during prom season, we did a program called Shattered Dreams to discourage high school students from drinking and driving. Yeah. And we'd go into families' homes whose students had been selected to participate. Now, it's all fake, but the parents were informed that their students were killed in this accident. And again, it's a mock, crash. And the police officer always had to use the same protocol. He'd make the parents sit down, and the parents would say, is my son or daughter okay? Now, the cop had just been to the wreck. He knew that the child was deceased, but he didn't go, yeah, Brett, I'm sorry. Your son was horribly mangled in this wreck. In fact, here are the pictures I took at the wreck. Like, that would be an excess of truth. But instead, what are the cops trained to do? They would say, no, come with us. We're going to take you to the hospital to be with your son, and the doctors will inform you.
The truth in love.
It's truth in love. That's the tension that we live in. In fact, another good philosopher, I know this sermon is very philosophical, is Voltaire. Listen to what he says. This is beautiful. Everything you say should be true, but not everything true should be said. That is a life lesson we can all learn. Our speech is not only a reflection of who we are, but who we are becoming. That's an important fact.
Yeah, man.
So what I'd like to do, I want to give you guys an illustration, and this is my closing story. So stand with me while I tell you this story. And we'll stretch our legs a little bit. Brett and I have just talked to you about speaking truth in love. And truth, as we learned today, what Jesus says is tell the truth. People in my kingdom simply say what is true. We don't need to embellish our words. We don't need to exaggerate our words with religious language. Just tell it in a way that corresponds to what is real. Now, this is tricky for a Christian like myself, right? For someone who follows Jesus, because I live within a realm of reality, but also hope. Right? Hope is a dangerous thing to have because I live in a reality and a belief in God that even though the reality may seem a certain way, I want it to be this way. And I want to speak truth in love that projects a reality that is hopeful and a future that is filled with, again, like grace and love and acceptance. When I was a professor at Dallas College, I remember I had a class, Intro to Philosophy, and it was a small class, only like 10 students. And I love when I had small classes because I get to interact with students. I get to know them. I get to ask questions and see how philosophy really, it gets to integrate in their life. And I remember students always come in. I'm always nervous the first day of class because they're judging me and I'm judging them, right? They're like, oh my God, look at this bald guy with a beard. Who does he think he is? And I'm going, he's going to fail, she's going to fail, right? No, I'm kidding. And I remember a lot of the more confident and aggressive students will sit up front. More students who know they got to take the class. And the least confident students usually sit in the back. And there was this one kid named James. And I remember James came in, looked real disheveled. His hair was matted, face very pale. He smelled. And he just sat in the back and he'd cross his arms and he'd just look down at the desk. Wouldn't participate in any of the discussions. Even if I called on him, he would just go. He'd shrug. And something like erupted inside of me, Brett, in my heart. I was like, I'm going to reach this kid. You know, he's 17, 18 years old. And I remember walking to campus and I saw James sitting under a tree on campus. And I walked over. I was like, hey, James, what's up, man? How are you? He's just eating a sandwich. I was like, man, I didn't see you in class like the last couple of times. Is everything all right? Just nothing. Again, hair matted, very disheveled. And I just became concerned. I began to pray for my buddy James, for my student James, all the while trying to keep a type of academic professionalism, right? He wouldn't turn in assignments, or if he turned them in, they were incomplete. He had too many absences. He wouldn't participate in discussion boards or in class. And then finally, I gave out the final paper prompt. Like, this is your final paper. This is like 50% of your grade. And it's a 3-page paper on a particular philosopher. And since it was such a small class, I said, look, guys, make an appointment, a 10-minute appointment with me to come in, look at your paper, we'll read it, and I'll grade it in front of you. That way you'll see what your final grade is. Well, students start signing up for different schedule times, and they'd come into my office, we'd read the paper, and I'd put a grade, type it in. Hey, Susan, you have a B+, awesome. They'd leave. The line got shorter and shorter. There were only 10 students, and I look out, no James. And my heart sunk. Because I knew like this kid was struggling, maybe even having suicidal thoughts. And finally, I'm getting ready to lock my office and I hear footsteps and it's James coming in. And he's like, I'm sorry I'm late, Dr. Doucet. I'm sorry. I was like, come on in, man. No worries. Sit down. Where's your paper, dude? And he pulls his paper out of his back pocket. He had it folded up. And it's all wrinkly and I sat down. And I know I'm looking at his grades. This kid needs like a 95 just to pass my class. And it was like 2 pages long. And it was supposed to be like a 3 to 4 page paper. And I'm like, man, James, what's up? And he's like, I suck. I don't even know why I'm alive. Like, my life's just horrible. I know I'm probably the most awful student you ever had. I just don't know why I'm here anymore. Just questioning everything. Man, my heart, like, I'm just trying to hold back tears, keep my academic professionalism, be the professor. He goes, I know I'm going to fail this class. I'm just going to drop out of school, like, whatever. And I wrote down on that paper, I went, James, and I wrote 99A. And I slid him his paper, and he's like, what? Why would you do that? Like, this is an awful paper. Like, it's not even the word count requirement. It's not even the paper size requirement. Like, and I was like, James, let me tell you something right now, buddy. I said, on paper, you're an F student. But I said, in my mind, you're an A person. I was like, use this moment as a trajectory, as a launch pad to become something that you want. Make life what you want it. Use this. Like, in my professional academic career, am I supposed to do that? I was always by the book. But my hope was for this kid to see this moment not as a failure in his life, but like, this 99 means more to him than actually giving him the grade that he, quote unquote, earned or worked for. And I said, I'm gonna be watching from afar, James. I have your email. I'm gonna be checking in on you. Use this moment. You did not fail this class. You may be an F student on paper, but you're an A person in life. Do it. From that moment on, every semester, James would send me over his grades. I think the lowest grade he ever had was like a B-. To this, right now, in Dallas, Texas, my buddy James is an RN at one of the hospitals.
Because one person said the truth in love.
Truth and love. Did it correspond to his reality? No, he deserved that F. But the reality I saw, I spoke truth and love with a projected reality that I knew would be hopeful. And that moment changed that kid's life. We all have that power. We all have that ability.
We're all A people.
We're all A people. Why? Because God loves us. And we love you too. Have a great day, Suncoast. We'll see you.